So he has this organic view of reality, which holds that reality is interdependent. You have all these different parts that work together. And our hand cannot work without the rest of our body. And so long as our hand has the rest of our body, it can really do cool things like play a Fender Stratocaster or write an essay. But if you sever my hand from my body, pretty much a paperweight at that point, or maybe fertilizer or something, I don't know. Its meaning and function is interdependent, as is everything in the world. All things are dependent on things outside of it. So his view would be consistent with the Western tradition of ethics or feminism.
Feminism.
Correct. Very good. Where's the Buddha? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the feminists believe that life is indeed interdependent. We are not born in a log cabin that we built ourselves. We are all born into a family upon which we are dependent and without which we would not exist. So all life is really interdependent in the sense that Schilling describes. The world and the self are two aspects of one organic unity. Now, before I try to make sense of that, can you explain to me what the heck he's talking about there? Bill?
Well, human beings were just a species of animals of thousands of other species on this planet Earth. Without the Earth, there's no species, and without the species, it's hard to see Earth for what it is. So,
I thought it was difficult. Bill has relieved me of that notion. Very, very good. The idea generally is that we are part of this universe. And when we look at the universe is perceiving itself. It's as if our thumb is looking at us. Yes. Two aspects of one organic unity. Now, one dilemma that he thinks that this helps us with is the mind-matter distinction, or the mind-body distinction that comes from Descartes. Does anybody remember the nature of that distinction? Yes, ma'am.
I think therefore I am.
That's his famous line, I think therefore I am. However, that for him proves the existence of this thinking thing. He doesn't know if he has a body at that point. If you think, well then when you think, you know that you exist as a thinking thing. However, you don't know for sure that you have a body. And for Descartes, we have this spirit that is immaterial, can live on after we die, and go to heaven if we're good Christians. But we also have this body that takes up weight, is three-dimensional in space, and is very different from this immaterial spirit. And the mind-body problem coming out of Descartes is how do you explain the spirit's ability to make this body raise its right hand? How does that happen? How does something immaterial make something material change? That is what we call the mind-body problem. Now, Schilling believes that the mind and the body, or matter, are really, their difference is only apparent rather than real. These are, in a way, two views of the same material body. So the spirit, for Schilling, would really be a product of the brain. And after we die, we're born with it. So, reality is organic in his view. Now, last time we touched on this notion of the absolute. And I tried to give you some contemporary scientific research that would better explain what he's alluding to here, this creative spirit in the universe. Are you making this up? Well, actually, no, he's not. And when scientists look at evolution and more broadly into thermodynamic evolution, the evolution of inorganic bodies and systems as well as organic systems, what we find is that there is this tendency of natural systems to maximize their power or maximize their ability to expend energy. Systems that do that have greater control over the future in the universe and have a greater influence over the future of natural systems. Systems that don't have that power, they lose. And so over billions of years, what we end up with are those natural systems that have maximized their power. And the universe, in evolving toward this maximization of power, is therefore going to illustrate a creative drive that leads to the creation of galaxies, solar systems, living systems, human beings. And it's fascinating. Maximum power principle is one statement for this thermodynamic notion. There's also a concept that they call self-organization that describes this behavior of natural systems as they develop their ability to grow. Well, it's getting dangerously close to what Schilling's talking about here, kind of creative spirit in the universe that gives rise to life as we know it. Yes, sir?
And in science and technology right now, they're trying to work on cells that self-organize. So on like a military field, it will take shape of whatever is needed at the time. It could be like a physical equipment or like a robot soldier or anything. And they sort of, right now it's really basic and it can self-organize like into a cube or a triangle or something. But they're trying to apply that to something a little bit more advanced, like equipment.
A gun?
Yeah.
I really need a gun. Insurance agent, give me a gun. I heard that at some point we'll have a machine that will make stuff for us. And if you need a blender, we just plug it in and make a blender. We'll work on it. He's got something to show me already. Now, this creative drive that leads us to create these systems that maximize their power, this can work on an unconscious level. This works on an unconscious level. We're not fully aware of what's going on. So just like those ants, and we talked about how those ants, they spit in each other's mouth, they pass these pheromones that lead to control their behavior and lead the queen to pump out the right kind of ants. Well, you could argue that human beings contribute to this creative spirit in the universe by talking to each other about religion, about music and art. That leads us all to behave in certain ways that has led to the creation of atomic energy. So the fact that we're not aware that we're maximizing power is as irrelevant as the fact that ants aren't aware either. So the idea could be that we are a creative spirit in the universe that leads to the creation of these new forms of power, and that's true whether we think that's the case or not. Whether we're conscious of it or not, we are participating. And here's some ways in which it works. Have we talked about beauty? And what are the markers for beauty? Why do we consider certain faces to be beautiful? We haven't talked about this in here before.
Symmetry, yeah.
We talked about symmetry?
No, we didn't talk about it, but I saw a documentary on it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about symmetry in this class. So they do this study on what we consider to be beautiful faces. And they get all these faces on computers, and they get a bunch of people to look at them and say what you think is beautiful, what's not. And what they find is those faces that tend to be considered beautiful tend to be faces that have high symmetry. One side is exactly like the other side. And they have this cool test to test for symmetry, where they take a picture of your face, then they take the right side and they generate a symmetric copy of it for your left side. And so they take that left side, they generate the copy, and then they put them two together. They fit perfect, you're symmetric. They fit like this, you're Lyle Lovett. And they did this one test. Well, I think Lyle Lovett was going out with Julia Roberts at the time, a long time ago, and her face is as symmetric as can be. And Lyle Lovett's got this funky nose, and then his face is crooked. let's face it, Lyle, your face is crooked. And, you know, it does not look all that handsome. And what we come to find is that symmetry is at the heart of what we consider to be beautiful. Now, evolutionary biologists are going to come in then and say, well, symmetry also is a marker for the ability for genes to reproduce themselves without mutation. If your cells can reproduce themselves without oops, you know, oops. No, we don't need any oops. That's Lyle Love. Okay, over here it's got to be perfect. So if your cells can reproduce without mutations, that kind of genetic purity is reflected in symmetry. And if you are unconsciously trying to select a mate so that your offspring will have this ability to reproduce cells without mutations, well then you're looking for symmetry. But you're not aware of that, Robert. You're just looking for a gorgeous woman, and her eyes, oh my God, they are so symmetric. No, we don't think in those terms, but unconsciously, that's what's going on. Unconsciously, we are led naturally to a healthy mother for our offspring. So that would be one way in which the creative spirit of the universe works through us unconsciously. What you think is beautiful is actually the creative spirit of the universe cultivating growth in the future. Beautiful. Beautiful.
People with like, one of my best friends has one like blue eye, one green eye, and it's so funny because she's so insecure about it. But it's like people literally come up to her at the bar and they're like, "Your eyes are gorgeous." She's like, and she turns bright red. She's mortified by it because she's like, it's not symmetrical. And her mom is a bitch, and like her mom's grown it up when she was little. Like, oh, your eyes aren't symmetrical. It's a bad thing.
Putting it out
But
there.
so many people think it's a good thing. And it's really funny. But like, she's so insecure about it.
Remember, this is being recorded, Big Tito.
Oh, yeah.
Blackmail.
You can't see faces. Just keep looking at them. You see.
Her mom loves me. Her mom loves everyone but her, but it's so, like she's so mean that like
Really?
your eyes are aren't symmetrical, and like she's been told that since she was little.
Yeah,
But-
they have the ability with a contact to correct that now.
Not really. Like it's
It wouldn't look
just
the
like a
same.
genetic mutation that like if she is literally like she's tried like 2 blue contacts and like it still has like the background color. When you put in a blue contact, if you have brown eyes, it looks different than if you have green eyes, kind of thing. But like it's she's so insecure about it though.
Interesting.
But it's like it's an intriguing fact. Like she's
Yeah.
pretty, but people like come out of nowhere and start talking about it. She's
Caleb, I bet we wouldn't even notice it. You know, all these women, they worry about the nails and everyone getting all that right. Have you ever seen a woman's fingernail on a date? Neither have I. Never.
I really
Or
hope somebody
shoes.
doesn't get their
They could be barefooted. I walk through the restaurant. I don't notice. Interesting. Interesting. The highest human function, according to Schilling, is when we participate in this creative process through creative art. And here the idea is that we create a work of art by letting our unconscious run wild. And our unconscious is guided toward growth in the future. That's why I'm attracted to symmetric women, among other things. And so, if I am writing a song, I'm not going to try to control it. I'm going to let my mind run free, and I'm going to let the spirit, the unconscious influences, guide me. I'm going to give myself over to the moment. I've talked about this before. When I'm in a solo and I'm in the middle of a song, I don't think about, I want to play that G sharp. No. You have these kind of loose, unconscious feelings, and you just let them run. You let them run. And almost the less you think about it, the better you play. The less you think about it, the better you play. Do you get that same feeling, Danny?
Definitely.
Are there times where, well, you write some songs, don't you?
Yes.
Do you feel that the unconscious can speak through your work if you allow it, or maybe even if you don't?
I think
what I do is I just leave the microphone on and I just play for hours and see what sounds good.
Yeah.
A lot of it sounds good.
Let the let the unconscious run, and then come back later and pick out things that you find that would be useful. And maybe that's a more effective way to go about it than planning in advance.
Yeah.
You know, oh, we got to do this studio album. We got to plan in advance what we're going to do. So, you got songs? I don't got songs. I don't got songs. Instead, why don't we just turn the mic on? How about that? Yeah. We'll have an album in 2 days. And that, that's allowing the unconscious to reign. Now, I'm thinking of examples. There was this famous band in the past, Steely Dan, that was famous for not allowing the unconscious to run. They would record everything and then do added takes a lot, and they would, a lot of dub stuff. They would never do anything live and interactive like that. I don't think they would. Don't bring your unconscious. Leave that behind. But then there are other groups that might take a more free-flowing approach to it. Any examples? Well, how do we know? How do we know what goes on? Cream. Well, you bring superstars together, and you're not going to tell me what to play. Shut the hell up, man. And you're going to allow each one to do their thing. Great example. Great example. So, a highest human function is the participation in this creative process through creative art. Now, I think he would define art broadly. I think that he would define art perhaps as being engaged in politics. I think what I'm doing right now could be interpreted as a form of art. What you do, whatever it is, can be viewed as art. Who's to say not there? So don't be afraid of the unconscious. Allow yourself to go with it, and you can become one with this creative spirit. Spirit in the sky. That's where I'm going to go when that's not going to be. Art alone can pacify our endless striving and resolve the contradiction between the conscious and the unconscious. What do you think? Art alone can pacify our endless striving. What's that, Mary?
I don't think so. I mean,
There should be other things.
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. Like some people can be just satisfied with just creating their art, but some people long for I don't know whatever they long for, but it's not applicable to everyone.
And what would it mean if the conscious and the unconscious are in contradiction? One example I think is Nietzsche provides, and Nietzsche argues that these interpretations of Christianity that hold abstinence as the ideal toward which we should strive, in his view, that is contrary to life on the planet and the creative spirit of the universe, which makes sexuality necessary. That's part of growth. And so Nietzsche would see Christianity as leading to a contradiction between the conscious and the unconscious. Because in our conscious mind, we want to go to heaven. And we know God's watching everything. And therefore, I remember when I was young, and I lived in Florida, and my parents were religious, and so I'm trying to aspire to this ideal, except I'm driving down alternate 19 in Florida, and there's Hooters here, there's a Jugs and Suds here. It's a whole theme going from Miami to Fort Lauderdale, by the way. I don't know if you've been to Florida, but they're not what you would call adult. Well, they're into adult stuff, but it's nothing but that all the way down. And I would literally consciously try not to look. Yeah, I think it was dangerous because you should check to see if somebody's coming. But no, there might be some naked breasts over there, so I'm gonna keep straight, you know. And there's this conflict going on. My conscious mind is trying to keep me, and then my unconscious mind is trying to look over there. I can't see. And is that healthy? No, no, it's not. It's not. I should. They are great, aren't they? They are. And Nietzsche believed that when we do that, we're turning the unconscious against, turning the conscious against the unconscious. And we're creating an animal that literally beats itself to death. Pretty sad. Pretty sad. So we should go ahead and do it. It absolutely is.
Amen.
Pass the Buddha this guy. And speak of wisdom here. So in Schilling's view, art is going to represent this fusion of the subject and the object, the phenomena and the noumena. Now this is just in our minds. We don't really get the truth, but art makes us feel as if we are understanding the object. Object understood as the nature within us. Belief based on aesthetic intuition, not empirical evidence, not the deduction of the logical argument, but we watch a work of art and we feel that noetic quality, that this must be the truth. So we're going to have to wait till. Art and philosophy, therefore, go together for Schilling. They go together. Philosophy is going to provide understanding, but philosophy is not going to provide certainty. Think about what I'm doing. I'm laying all these social philosophies out for you, all these ethical theories out for you, but I'm not picking which one's right. I'm giving you an understanding of all of them, but I'm not giving you the certainty that one of those is right. According to Schilling, art can help with that. Art brings the whole man. Here, this is interesting. Philosophy attains to the highest, but brings only the fraction of a man. And one might say the conscious part of the human. But art is going to bring the unconscious as well, and therefore art is going to bring the whole human, not just the conscious mind. Bill?
And the irony of him saying that is Schilling and everything he says is biased towards his own experience from birth and like on the subconscious level even. And so when he says art brings the whole man, that's only, like he would say, the fraction of his real conscious even saying that, you know?
He's a philosopher saying
So it's like a fractal of a fractal. It's like twice removed.
Now, here is the dilemma. Plato actually wrote his philosophy in the form of a play, a dialogue. So he was using art to convey his philosophy. Maybe according to Schilling, Plato was bringing the whole Plato to the game. I don't know. But many philosophers, particularly in the 1900s, 20th century, would, and in the 19th century as well, they, instead of writing philosophical treatises, they would write fictional works. And so Jean-Paul Sartre writes Nausea is his novel. Wins a Nobel Prize for a novel called Nausea. Can you imagine? Then he came out with another, his buddy Camus comes out with another one called The Plague. They made a movie out of The Plague. These guys, depressing stuff, they can make a movie out of The Plague. They can make a movie out of something Johnny wants. The world of art and the real world are created through the same activity. According to Schilling, we create these. And as I was saying before, our body is kind of a movie of the world waiting to happen. We create this movie of the world. Well, that's what we create in art too. We create a movie of the world. The real world is simply the as yet unconscious poetry of the spirit. That's poetry right there. See, that messes you up, Bill, because he's doing art in his philosophy.
Yeah.
So he's bringing the whole dude. Bring the whole dude. Questions, comments about Schilling's view of art and philosophy? Bill?
Do you know if these guys who talked about art, if they were like existentialists or?
That has not emerged by this point. There's a philosopher coming along, Kierkegaard, who's going to be one of the first that come up with that general idea, but not quite yet. Not quite yet. So you guys have a great Thanksgiving, and I'll see you next week. Hey Bill, can you turn that off?
Yeah. Crap.
Hit that red button there.
Got it right.